We will catch up now with the GM of your Seattle Mariners, who's with us on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline, Justin Hollander. Justin, how are you, man?
Tired. How are you guys?
Tired. Well, take us through what was going on. You know, we'll get into what you guys did and didn't do, but just from your perspective, looking at everything as it sits, do you feel like you made the team better?
We do. We need to make the team better offensively. As I guess frustrating as the first 100 games or so was for us, we felt like we had to make some changes to the roster construction to put more pressure on other teams night to night, to do something to help our pitching staff, which has just been phenomenal for that stretch of time, to give ourselves the best chance we could every night to just put more runs on the board. And we needed guys that had really long-term fits with the Mariners, and we do feel like we did that with Dominic and Josh.
Hey, Justin, as far as replacing Paul Sewald, just his role in the bullpen, did part of that trade have to do with the confidence that you have in, maybe a particular individual, or just your bullpen as a whole?
Well, first, there will be no purely replacing Paul. If I could just take a second to laud Paul and his contributions, and this was a particularly gut-wrenching one for the whole organization. Obviously, signing Paul as a minor league free agent and then him just erupting and becoming one of the best relievers in the American League over the last 3 years. There is no one way or one person that's going to fill that kind of void. I can't say enough about the contributions that Paul has made to the city, to our organization. Just unbelievable, and really, it's a hard one for me, as you can tell. Just he's really close with Paul and feel very strongly about what he's done for our team. In terms of how we, plug that hole or pick up the innings, I think it'll just be a collective. It'll be some combination of Mooney and Brash and Gabe, Justin Topa. Sauce has been awesome for us. Some young guys will have to step up and fill new roles. We worked really hard today to try and make additions to make sure that we had enough depth. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, we didn't get there. But it'll be incumbent upon the group as a whole to pick up little pieces of what Paul did. There is no one person that's going to be able to pick up Paul's role in totality.
Hey, Justin, just back to the guys you brought in, and, we're not watching a lot of Diamondback games out here, obviously, except for when the Mariners played them. So we're left to look at stats and look at numbers with the guys you brought in. And I think, maybe you've got a sense of it at this point, but, the fans, and I'm throwing myself into this, a little underwhelmed with what we look at stats-wise with the new guys. So what do we, and that's not to say they can't turn into something, or there's something we're not seeing by not watching them every night, but tell me what it is that makes him, I guess makes it feel like, yeah, we are in this, we are competing, we're keeping up with the rest of the teams in our division, because I've got to be honest, on the surface, it doesn't look that way.
So Dominic Canzone is one of the best minor league performers in professional baseball this year, doing it at AAA. And, it's impossible to look at his stat line in AAA and not see that before he came to the big leagues, was one of the best hitters in minor league baseball. Since he has come to the big leagues, his underlying information says he's already a good major league hitter. Obviously, we're talking about a small sample of at-bats, but I would encourage people not to look at the surface stats of batting average or home runs and RBIs in an incredibly small sample, and instead look at the quality of contact that he's making, the level of contact he's making. He's an above-average corner outfield defender. He's a major league regular, we feel like, today. For whatever it's worth, when we were playing the Diamondbacks last weekend, he was hitting in the middle of their lineup as a rookie. So this is, I understand that you can look at the back of the baseball card stats for a small sample of games since his call-up and not think this guy's a superstar or an average regular or whatever number or whatever term you want to put on it. But he's a very good player, and we think he's going to be a very good player in our lineup for a long time. And obviously, Josh Rojas having a little bit of a down year this year. The previous couple of years, he was an above-average regular in the big leagues as a second baseman, third baseman for the Diamondbacks. He's an excellent base runner. He's a good defender at second base. He has on-base skills. He's a really quality all-around player who's in the middle of a little bit of a down year. Just a year ago, I believe he was a 2.5 win player by Fangraphs F4. He's a good player, and he makes us better today.
Hey, tell us, Justin, a little bit about Colton Wong and his sort of how that went for him, his departure, and sort of, as he went along, when did you guys kind of start to make that decision, and just the entire saga there?
Sure. Obviously, Colton was somebody that we had targeted in the offseason. We felt like he would be a great fit in Seattle. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. I think everybody knows that his playing time after the first 6-8 weeks of the season was reduced greatly. I think Colton handled everything like a total pro. He understood that he didn't play well and that, he wasn't his usual self. I don't have an explanation on why it happened, why it deteriorated so quickly from what was a really good major league player last year to less than that this year. I think we knew for a while that if we could upgrade, we'd like to. It's a business, and as much as we believed in what Colton Wong's skill set had been for really the duration of his career, for whatever reason, it didn't show up in the way that we or he had hoped, and we need to do better than that. So when we had a chance to upgrade and acquire Josh, it was a pretty easy decision and really a key part of the deal for us to acquire Josh. And it was something that we wrestled with the Diamondbacks with for quite a while. It was the inclusion of Josh, because we felt like that was an area that we just need to improve over the last couple months of the regular season. And we feel like Josh and Cabby together as a second base tandem will improve our production both offensively and defensively for the second half of the season.
So, Justin, I guess in retrospect, looking back at what you guys did in the offseason, and I think you probably get that this was a point of frustration for fans. And, again, I throw myself in there. I didn't love the offseason, and I felt like there was a huge opportunity for this organization to capitalize on last season. I mean, you guys had this city on the edge of their seats. And going into the offseason, a ton of optimism and opportunity to really own this city. And we went with Colton Wong and A.J. Pollock and Tommy LaStella, and none of those guys are even on the team now. So when you look at that, I mean, is that just, hey, we misread what we thought they were going to bring to the table, or what was the expectation versus what was actually produced by those guys?
I didn't do a good job, I guess is the best way of saying it. We didn't have expectations for those guys to be stars, but we had the expectation that those guys and their track records fitting in with the young up-and-coming players that we have on the team, the addition of Teo, would make us a really well-rounded offensive team, capable of putting pressure on teams in different ways, combined with what we felt like was the heart and soul of the team was the pitching staff. We felt like we were going to be better, and we weren't. We really struggled for quite a while. And truly, if we're looking to blame, like, that blame falls on me. I didn't do a good enough job. I don't have an explanation why those moves didn't necessarily work the way they want. I don't think there's like a singular reason or something like that we missed on that was sort of the same about all those players. I just didn't do a good enough job of making choices in the offseason. I felt like our process was fine and the results were bad, and we needed to get better. And ultimately, whatever reasons we used to make those decisions, you have to look honestly and assess as you go through the season whether you really think it's going to get better or you need to make a change. And it was clear to us for a while that we needed to make a change, and when we had an opportunity to truly upgrade, we took that opportunity.
Well, and I can appreciate you taking ownership of that, but at the same time, let's talk about ownership. Do you feel like you've got the financial flexibility to go out and go after somebody who's maybe closer to their prime, as opposed to a 35, 36-year-old where you're hoping to capture something of what they used to be? If you wanted to go after Shohei, if you wanted to go after, one of the shortstops last year, we're just throwing out hypotheticals. If you wanted Dansby Swanson, let's just throw that out. Do you feel like you've got the leeway, or are you I tend to look at this like a kid who gets an allowance. It's dad, mom, they give you this money and say, here it is. It's up to you to make it work. I feel like that's basically how it goes with the Mariners. They're giving you an allowance, and here, Justin, Jerry, do what you can with it.
That's how it works with 30 teams. You have an allowance, and most of the time it's up to you to spend it. We have plenty of ownership support. Today at the deadline, in conversations with John Stanton, Chris Larson, with our ownership group, we had financial support to make good decisions. Whether we were in it or out of it, John stressed to us he did not want to make financial reasons be the driver of what we were doing. Tell me what the right baseball thing to do is, and I'm supportive of that. They want to win. They want to bring championships to Seattle. This is not an ownership issue. We chose Colton Wong as a baseball ops group, and we made a decision that didn't work out. And that's my fault. That's Jerry's fault. To some extent, it's Colton Wong's fault, obviously. He didn't play as well as he'd hoped. But that's not John Stanton's fault. That's not Chris Larson's fault. That's a baseball ops decision that wasn't a good one.
Hey, Justin, you mentioned Cabby briefly, and he's been kind of one of those guys that we've talked about, kind of the same way like Dylan Moore and Sam Haggerty. Is he, and I love that he is so pesky with the time clock and things like that, and just on the bases and everything. But is he seriously a contender to be an everyday player, do you think?
I think he could grow into that. I think right now the plan is for him and Josh Rojas to timeshare based on platoon matchups, and that's, we think, what Cavi's best role is. He's an awesome irritant, and I say that in the most loving way possible. He's Pat Beverly. He's the scrappy guy who gets under your skin. He does all the little things exceptionally well. He's a really good defender. The play he made last night on the bad hop where he turned to double play, he's an incredibly tough play. He almost got his face taken off and got the glove up there and turned to double play. He steals bases at key moments. He grinds at bats. He gets hit by pitches. He takes his walks. He's got enough power to be dangerous. He's a very interesting, productive role player right now that could grow into an everyday player. But like we did earlier this season, I think his best role is platooning with Rojas.
Hey, Justin, and again, we're speaking with Justin Hollander, GM of the Seattle Mariners, here with Wyman and Bob, Seattle Sports on 710. And we do appreciate you answering the tough questions, Justin. Just in looking at building this team, and obviously it's your job and it's Jerry's job to look toward the future at 24 and 25, and I totally understand that. But I would assume you also understand from your perspective the frustration with the fans when they hear, yeah, well, we're looking at deals that are going to help us in 24 and 20. Of course, that's your job. But when you verbalize it, it makes it sound like you're kicking the can down the road. And you still got – you're 3.5 back in the wild card here. And this team, this club, 2023 is in the thick of it. And I think fans want to feel like, yeah, we're all in right now. This isn't, future, we'll get into that. But do you kind of understand the frustration that comes along with those conversations?
I live it every day. And, the part of the reason why we chose the deal we chose for Paul, and I think this is obvious, but I'll say it anyway, there were a ton of teams interested in Paul. We could have done a lot of different types of deals. The deal we ultimately did was because there were players involved that could step on the field right away for us in key roles. We had to fill roles now because our team demanded it. Our team is good enough to compete right now. Teoscar Hernandez is still here. Other players are still here because we feel like we can win this year. Our team is playing really well. We played really well in July. I wasn't ready. Jerry wasn't ready. Ownership wasn't ready. Our whole baseball ops group wasn't ready. Our coaching staff wasn't ready to turn to 24. We do feel like we can make the playoffs this year. And if we do make the playoffs, we feel like with the way our team is set up, with as good as our starting pitching is, we feel like we can do damage. It was incumbent upon us not to wave a white flag and trade Paul Sewald for prospects that were an A-ball. We just didn't entertain those style of offers because they didn't help us this year. So I understand that frustration of people thinking we're looking forward to 2 and 3 years down the road. I can assure you and them, we're not looking 2 and 3 years down the road exclusively. We were focused on threading a really tough needle, which is how do we get better today and how do we get better in the future? And that's really important because we need to be better in both of those time frames.
So in your opinion, the acquisition of Canzone and Rojas is the difference that gets this offense to the point of being in legitimate contention for the postseason versus any other moves you could have made?
It helps this year's team. I think our players playing more to their standard, as we've seen over the last 30 days, helps this year's team. It's a combination of things, but yes, we feel like we are a much better offensive team today on August 1st than we think we were 4 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago. We did not play great offense for a big stretch of the season. I think we will play better offense for the rest of the season.
Hey, Justin, tell us about Teoscar. We saw it not in the lineup, just a day off. Kind of everybody's heart skipped a beat or thought,
Sure.
That's odd. But as far as where he's at, and you kind of mentioned, some of your players hitting up to their standards, 16 home runs, 59 RBIs, 238 batting average. Where, how far off is he? And is he, are you seeing signs of him getting back? You mentioned the last month, but you think he's you feel like he's on pace to get back to where the guy that you thought that you acquired?
Jared and I visited with Scott about this last night. He felt like Teo needed a day. He's played every game this season, which it's hard to do in the way the big leagues go today. Not many players play every single day. He's grinding it pretty hard right now. Obviously, he had a rough April and May. He was awesome in June and seems to have hit the skids a little bit again in July. He needed to take a breath today. The day out of the lineup really had nothing to do with the trade deadline. Scott just felt like he needed a day, and obviously that's Scott's call to make. We need to get Teo back to being the kind of player he's always been. He's kind of always been a metronome, particularly from May through September. He's been a traditional slow starter in April, of being a guy who will drop an 800 to 900 OPS on you, who'll hit for power, who will do damage. And outside of June, we really haven't seen that this year. We need to get him back on track. If we do, that's obviously a huge boon to our lineup.
Hey, Justin, how did the Sewald trade go over in that clubhouse? Do you have any sense of how the players received that news?
I talked to some people last night post-game. Obviously, I went down and visited with Paul, but beyond that, I didn't visit with any other players. My sense is that most players understood. They understood that our team needed to get better and that we had a real avenue to do that, and using Paul as the trade chip to help other areas of the team. I think they expected it. Paul expected it. He was a total pro about the way they handled it. I don't want to speak for our players' emotions. That's not really fair. I'm not dialed in enough with how any individual might be feeling or thinking. Paul is a beloved player. I told you, I personally am very close with Paul. I love Paul. These are hard decisions to make. I think I used the term gut-wrenching. It was gut-wrenching for me to make that decision, but ultimately my job, Jerry's job, is to do the right thing for the Mariners. And when we have the ability to take Paul Sewald and trade him to the Diamondbacks and fill what we felt like were 2 everyday player slots in our club, we had to do that. So these are really hard decisions. I don't begrudge anyone who's disappointed to see Paul Sewald walk out the door. I was disappointed to see Paul walk out the door, so I understand those emotions.
Where does it rank for you as far as job difficulty in doing things like that, where that, or you get a sense that, everybody's going to not be able to see what you're seeing, or, you're going to take, a guy like Sewald, who you probably got a sense that, like, he was our favorite on the show. Justin, he was like 60% of our show. No, I'm kidding. But
he was like an unofficial co-host.
Yeah, I mean, practically. But, just sort of explaining a rank, how difficult that is, because you're going to make, you're going to make moves that aren't very popular, and you just got to hang with it and believe in your process. But how hard is that?
I guess I feel a little ridiculous asking anyone to feel sorry for me. I have one of the best jobs in the world, so I don't want to do like a woe is me thing. Like, I get to be the GM of the Seattle Mariners. That's pretty awesome. But it was crappy. It's crappy to make those decisions. Like, you want to make everyone happy with everything that you do. We didn't play well enough. I didn't do a good enough job in the offseason to let it roll without making changes at the deadline this year, and that's my fault. Like, if I am disappointed to have to say goodbye to Paul and trade him, it's because I didn't do a good enough job in the offseason. I have to live with the consequences of, the decisions that were made in October, November, December of January of last year. I'm not looking for anyone to feel sorry or have anyone feel bad that, we had to make that decision. They're tough calls to make. That's why, Jerry and I have our jobs, is to make them.
Hey, as far as health goes, what's your expectation? I don't know how much new information we have on Kelnick or Marco. Do you expect that we'll see either this year? Are you holding out hope that they're both going to be back? Maybe one? What's the outlook?
I don't really have any new updates on either guy right now. I don't really expect that Kelnick, if he's back, will be back for all of September. I think it's possible he's back for some portion, if not the very end of the season. It really just depends on how he heals. And on Marco, I just don't have an update. The injury that he's dealing with is a tricky one. It could all of a sudden go from sort of being static to him feeling great. And when it happens, we'll definitely provide an update. But I just don't have an update right now on whether we'll make see Marco or not this year.
Hey, Justin, sorry to kind of go backwards a little bit, but how much of it, like when you go into the trade deadline, do you have, you can't let your emotions get in the way, right? So, as far as like the team and what they're doing, if they'd had, something around the trade deadline that they had last year, that was pretty inspiring, right? You had, like a a streak there that was pretty significant. But is that something that you have to decide? Do you decide as you go, or is it like as you're a month or two away, go, all right, we're going to be disciplined about this, and if they are playing here, we're going to do this? Does that factor into it, or are you just always going, hey, look, I'm just trying to make the team better right now?
I think you're always assessing, maybe not daily, but weekly, where you think the team is at and trying to lay out the best plans based on what is happening. Our team played really well in July. The reason that we made the moves we made, when we made trades that brought back major league players, is we think our team is still pretty good and has a chance to be much better in the second half and get into the playoffs. You're always sort of updating your own forecast. I will say that, I said to Jerry last week during the series, jokingly, do you think it's absurd that we may change our mind about what we think is the right thing to do based on the next 3.5 hours? And I was 100% kidding, of course, but that's kind of this time of year. Is if you win and the teams in front of you lose, you feel great, and if it goes the other way, you feel terrible. And those one-game swings, particularly when you're playing a team that is directly in front of you in either a wild card or division race, feel like 10-game swings all at once. I give a ton of credit to our team and the way they played. We've played really good teams over the last few weeks, with the exception of the first series coming out of the break when we didn't play well. We've played really well. We've won series. We've banged the ball around the field. We've pitched well. The bullpen has been really good. They've done what they needed to do. If we keep playing like this, good things will happen for the next 2 months.
Hey, Justin, last one before we let you go. And I said this before the season, and I just want to know if you feel like I'm being unfair. I said if this team, last year was so much fun. We've talked a million times with each other about it, and just rolling into the season, the anticipation that, feeling the disappointment I did with the offseason, I said, if this team doesn't make the postseason this year, barring major injuries that get in the way, I'm going to look at it as a failed season. Am I being unfair about that?
Anytime you lead with a question asking if you're being unfair, you probably are being unfair, but I feel that for whatever it's worth. So I think this team is a team that is as the talent level of a postseason team. I think our pitching staff is dynamic. I think you could go back and count 5 or 8 or 10 or 12 games that were decided by small moments where either something weird happened or we didn't execute. And if those things are different, maybe we're viewing this team in the season in a different light. You can't really unring the bell on those moments, but we can go do the right thing for the last 2 months of the season. I will be incredibly disappointed if we do not play in the postseason, I guess is the best way of saying it.
Yeah. Hey, Justin, always appreciate your time, especially now. I know it's not easy to, sit here and answer the tough questions about why this, why that. So I really do respect and appreciate you taking the time to do that. And I know the listeners do as well. So thanks as always. Can't wait to see how the rest of the season plays out. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you soon.
Thanks for having me on.